Welcome to the Veil of Truth, your gateway to uncovering hidden insights and illuminating mysteries. I'm thrilled you've joined our global community. Whether you're watching from a bustling city skyline or a quiet countryside, we're glad you're here. Globe showing Europe, Africa, so tell me, where are you tuning in from today? Chapter 1, The Gala at Waverly House. The evening air over the Kent countryside held a soft chill, the kind that hinted at autumn's approach. Above the treetops, the great silhouette of Waverly House rose in stately grandeur, its stone facade bathed in golden light, its windows glittering like jewels against the darkening sky. The estate had witnessed generations of Cavendishs, each one as proud as the last. But tonight, beneath its ornate chandeliers and marble staircases, it would witness something far darker. Inside, the grand ballroom shimmered. Crystal glasses clinked, the orchestra tuned its instruments, and laughter floated through the air like perfume. The Cavendish Charity Gala was the event of the season, a gathering of politicians, artists, patrons, and the merely wealthy. Gowns rustled, diamonds sparkled, and conversation hummed like the steady beat of a beehive. And among the guests stood a small, immaculately dressed man with a neatly waxed moustache and eyes that missed nothing. Monsieur Hercule Poirot had been invited as a guest of honor, though he himself often said he preferred the quiet precision of a chessboard to the chaos of high society. Yet curiosity, that most persistent of his companions, had brought him here. Mon Dieu, he murmured softly as he surveyed the ballroom. How they dance, these English people, as if they move not to the music, but to the rhythm of their reputations. Beside him, Captain Hastings chuckled. You must admit, Poirot, Lady Cavendish does know how to stage an evening. Half of London's titled set is here. Poirot inclined his head, watching Lady Cavendish glide across the room, her silver gown catching the light with every turn. She was elegant, too elegant, perhaps, for the faint tension in her face. He noted the way her smile faltered whenever her husband, Lord Edward Cavendish, approached. A tall man with a commanding presence, Lord Cavendish had the confident air of one accustomed to admiration and obedience. Observe, Hastings, Poirot said, leaning closer. The eyes of the husband, they wander often toward the pianist, Mademoiselle Clara Henshaw. And the eyes of the wife, they do not wander at all. They remain fixed, calm, and so very watchful. Voila! There, already, is one petite drama. Hastings followed his friend's gaze toward the young pianist seated near the orchestra. Clara Henshaw was striking, dark-haired, graceful, her hands moving over the keys with delicate precision. Lord Cavendish applauded her a little too warmly after each piece, while his wife clapped only once. Poirot's moustache twitched in quiet amusement. A waiter passed by with champagne. Poirot declined politely, but Hastings accepted a glass. You'll see mysteries everywhere if you keep watching people like that, Hastings teased. Perhaps, Poirot replied, but then, mon ami, one day I shall see a real one. The gala continued with speeches and laughter. Lord Cavendish rose to toast the guests, his voice loud and cheerful, though his eyes betrayed weariness. To our friends and benefactors, he said, raising his glass. And to the future, may it be as bright as this evening. The crowd cheered. Music swelled again, and the dancers returned to the floor. Yet, as the night deepened, Poirot noticed undercurrents beneath the gaiety, subtle gestures that most would overlook. The art dealer Lionel Drake arguing quietly with the critic Miss Vane near the gallery door. The butler Mr. Travers slipping in and out with anxious precision, glancing often at his master. The young Reverend Miles standing apart, his gaze fixed on the marble staircase as though dreading something unseen. Poirot's brows knitted. There is too much tension for so fine a party, he murmured. When people smile so hard, Hastings, it is often because they wish to hide their teeth. Come now, Poirot, Hastings said, smiling. You can't suspect a murder at a charity ball. Poirot gave a small shrug. I suspect nothing, my friend. I observe. As the clock neared midnight, the orchestra paused for the final waltz. The chandeliers glowed softly, the air scented with lilies and candle wax. Poirot and Hastings stood near the staircase, preparing to take their leave. Lord Cavendish passed them, glass in hand, nodding pleasantly. Monsieur Poirot, I trust you've enjoyed the evening. Immensely, my lord, Poirot replied with a courteous bow. Such elegance. Such refinement. Though, he paused delicately, perhaps not all enjoy themselves equally. Lord Cavendish chuckled, his tone slightly forced. Ah, you notice everything, don't you? He lifted his glass. To the little grey cells, then. Poirot smiled faintly. And to the truth, which always arrives, whether one invites it or not. Moments later, the orchestra began its final piece. The crowd moved to the centre of the room, and Poirot turned his gaze toward the terrace windows, where rain had begun to fall. The storm outside had come without warning, wind pressing against the glass, thunder muttering in the distance. The house seemed to tremble with life, as though holding its breath. Then, a flicker. The lights dimmed. A brief gasp ran through the guests. Darkness. A clatter of glass. And then, silence. Within seconds, the chandeliers blazed back to life. And on the marble floor beside the staircase, Lord Cavendish lay motionless, his champagne glass overturned, the golden liquid pooling beside his hand. Lady Cavendish screamed. The music halted. Guests rushed forward, confusion breaking into panic. Hastings knelt beside the fallen man. He's not breathing, he said, voice tight. Good heavens. Poirot, I think he's dead. Poirot was already beside him, kneeling with a precision that seemed almost reverent. He did not touch the body. His eyes moved instead, to the glass, the hand, the lips faintly discolored, the faint scent that hung in the air. He murmured softly, almost to himself, almonds. Lady Cavendish clutched the banister, trembling. It can't be, he was perfectly well. Poirot rose, his face grave. Madam, he said gently, I fear your husband has been murdered. A stunned silence fell. Beyond the windows, lightning flashed, white and merciless, illuminating the grandeur of Waverly House and the horror within. Poirot turned toward the stunned guests, his voice calm but firm. No one must leave, he declared. I beg you, remain exactly where you are. Until we know the truth, Waverly House itself becomes the scene of a crime. He looked once more at the lifeless figure of Lord Cavendish and then up the staircase to the silent gallery above. There, half hidden behind the balustrade, he glimpsed the flutter of a crimson ribbon, caught on the railing like a whisper of what had just passed. Poirot's eyes narrowed. A thread, he murmured, and perhaps, the beginning of a tapestry most terrible. Chapter 2, The Gathering Storm. The ballroom of Waverly House, moments ago alive with laughter and music, had fallen into a stunned and terrible silence. The storm outside battered the tall windows, thunder rolling across the countryside as if echoing the chaos within. Hercule Poirot stood at the center of the scene, immaculate as ever, his eyes glinting beneath the chandeliers. Around him, guests murmured in shock. Some wept softly, others whispered, already weaving theories out of fear. Lady Cavendish had been led to a chair, her pale hands trembling as she clutched a handkerchief. Inspector James Felton of Scotland Yard arrived shortly after midnight, his car sliding up the gravel drive through sheets of rain. He was a tall, solid man in his 40s with the steady air of one who preferred order to elegance. He strode into the ballroom, hat dripping, coat unbuttoned, eyes sharp. Well, well, he muttered, surveying the scene. A death at a gala. Always a blasted mess. Who found him first? I did, said Captain Hastings. We were near the staircase when the lights went out. When they came on again, Lord Cavendish was, well, as you see. Felton nodded briskly, then turned to Poirot with a faint sigh. I might have guessed you'd be involved, Monsieur Poirot. Trouble seems to follow you like a faithful dog. Poirot smiled politely. Ah, Inspector, perhaps it is merely that crime, like a dog, knows a keen scent when it finds one. Felton gave a short laugh. We'll see about that. Looks to me like a heart attack. A bit of excitement, some champagne, Anne. Poirot raised a finger delicately. Ah, but before you close the case, mon ami, permit me a small observation. The scent of almonds, you detect it, perhaps. Felton frowned, bending toward the body. After a moment, he nodded slowly. Cyanide. Just so, said Poirot softly. And therefore, not nature but design. Lady Cavendish gave a strangled cry. You mean, poisoned? Edward was murdered. Poirot inclined his head gravely. It appears so, madam. And the poison, it acts swiftly. Whoever administered it must have done so moments before the lights failed. Felton straightened, his face grim. Right. Nobody leaves this house tonight. Travers, he called to the butler, lock the doors and have the servants remain in the hall. Yes, sir. Travers bowed and moved off, pale but composed. Poirot bent once more beside the fallen lord. He did not touch the body, but examined its surroundings, the overturned glass, the slight mark on the man's cuff, and something glinting near the banister. He picked it up carefully, a gold cufflink, engraved with the letter E. Curious, he murmured. Only one. He glanced at the other wrist, the twin was missing. Lost in the fall, perhaps. Hastings suggested. Perhaps, said Poirot. Yet, I think not. Look, no mark of tearing, no loose thread. Someone removed it. And here, he pointed to the banister, a small thread, red silk. From a gown, most likely. He wrapped the thread neatly in his handkerchief and placed both clues in his pocket. Felton, meanwhile, was questioning the guests. Who was nearest to Lord Cavendish when the lights went out? Several spoke at once, Lady Cavendish by the fireplace, Clara Henshaw at the piano, Lionel Drake near the gallery door, Reverend Miles at the buffet. Each one's account overlapped and contradicted another's. Order, please. Felton barked. One at a time. Poirot listened silently, arms folded, eyes half closed, the picture of patience. When the statements concluded, he said quietly, Inspector, may I suggest we examine the scene most carefully before our memories grow clouded by fear and gossip? Felton grunted but nodded. Go ahead, then. I suppose you'll do it whether I agree or not. Poirot's small frame moved with astonishing precision. He circled the body, studying every detail, the pattern of spilled champagne, the scuff on the marble, the faint indentation on the carpet where a heel had pressed too hard. He murmured, someone approached him from the right side, there, where the droplets are fewer. They held the glass, he took it, the poison was within. And then, the light, it failed at the perfect moment. Felton frowned. Coincidence? None, said Poirot. Convenience? The blackout was planned. Yet the timing, that required knowledge. The lights flickered once earlier this evening, n'est-ce pas? Did anyone take notice? Hastings blinked. Yes, around 10:30. Only for a second. Precisely, said Poirot. An experiment, perhaps, to test the switch. Felton sighed. All right, we'll have the electrician questioned. But what about motive? Poirot turned, surveying the guests, the nervous shifting, the darting eyes, the whispering mouths. Motive, he said softly. Look around you, Inspector. Here we have greed in evening dress, jealousy wearing pearls, ambition scented with rosewater. There will be no shortage of motive. He stepped toward Lady Cavendish. Madam, forgive my intrusion. Did your husband have any enemies? Her face was white, but her composure remarkable. Enemies? No, certainly not. Edward was respected, admired, loved. Poirot interrupted gently. A pause. Then, almost inaudibly, yes, in his way. Poirot bowed slightly. And the young pianist, Mademoiselle Henshaw, she was a friend of your husband's, n'est-ce pas? The lady's lips tightened. He admired her talent, as did we all. She was here to perform, nothing more. Poirot inclined his head. Of course. He turned next to Clara Henshaw, who stood near the piano, her eyes red. Mademoiselle, did Lord Cavendish speak to you before his death? She hesitated. He thanked me for playing. That was all. No other conversation? Her gaze flickered toward Lady Cavendish, then back. None. Poirot gave a small smile, courteous, but knowing. You are a poor liar, mademoiselle, and I commend you for it. The good liars, they are far more dangerous. Felton cleared his throat impatiently. We can continue these interviews in the morning. For now, the body will be moved to the library. Poirot, you'll have a guest room, I suppose. Merci, Inspector, said Poirot mildly. I accept. But first, a word of advice, ensure the telephone line remains watched. If our murderer is clever, he will try to reach beyond these walls before dawn. Felton nodded, dispatching constables. The guests were ushered to their rooms, murmuring among themselves. The storm still raged outside, a lightning flashed across the long windows, and the old house seemed to shudder. Poirot remained in the ballroom a little longer, his mind already tracing invisible lines between clues. He stood at the foot of the staircase, gazing at the polished banister where the red thread had clung. Somewhere upstairs, a door closed softly. Curious, he whispered. One cufflink gone, one thread read, and a death time to darkness. It is, perhaps, a pattern beginning to form. Hastings returned, looking weary. I say, Poirot, do you really think the killer's still here? Poirot's eyes gleamed. But of course, mon ami. The murderer is among us, perhaps even now unable to sleep, listening to the wind and wondering if Hercule Poirot has already begun to see. He smiled faintly, smoothing his moustache. And he is right to wonder, for I have seen enough tonight to know this, the truth hides not in the shadows, but in the smallest of details. And those details, they are already whispering to me. Outside, thunder cracked again, rolling over the fields like a warning. Inside, Waverly House waited, vast, silent, and heavy with secrets. Chapter 3, The Guests and Their Secrets. Morning crept slowly over Waverly House, pale light filtering through tall mullioned windows. The storm had passed, leaving the grounds drenched and silent. Dew clung to the lawns like tears. Inside, the mood was equally subdued, the laughter and music of the night before felt like something imagined, a dream broken by tragedy. The guests assembled reluctantly for breakfast in the long dining room. Conversation was muted, eyes wary. A place at the head of the table stood conspicuously empty, the chair of Lord Cavendish. The staff moved quietly, silver trays in hand, the clink of porcelain unnaturally loud against the hush. Inspector Felton stood at the far end, his notepad open, his voice brisk. No one leaves the estate until further notice, he announced. There's a constable at every exit. Scotland Yard will arrive this afternoon to take statements formally. Until then, you'll answer to me, and to Monsieur Poirot here. A murmur ran through the guests at the mention of Poirot's name. Some looked relieved, others uneasy. Poirot himself sat composed, sipping his coffee, eyes wandering from one face to the next, calm, polite, unreadable. Beside him, Captain Hastings scribbled notes, doing his best to keep up with the detective's darting observations. When breakfast ended, Felton and Poirot withdrew to the library, now serving as a temporary investigation room. Poirot preferred it that way, the smell of old leather, the heavy curtains, the orderliness of shelves, a place where thoughts could be arranged like books. "Inspector," Poirot said, settling into a chair, "shall we begin our little inquisition?" Felton smirked. "You mean questioning, I suppose." "All right. We'll start with Lady Cavendish." Lady Cavendish. She entered with her usual poise, though her complexion was pale, her eyes shadowed by sleeplessness. Dressed in black silk, she looked every inch the grieving widow, and yet there was something tightly controlled about her calm. "Lady Cavendish," Felton began, "you were in the ballroom when the lights went out." "I was," she replied evenly. "I was standing by the fireplace, speaking with Reverend Miles. When the lights failed, I thought it a fuse. Then I heard a cry." "You didn't approach your husband?" "Not immediately. There were too many people crowding forward." Poirot leaned forward slightly. "Madam, you and your husband, you were happy together." A pause. "As happy as most married people, I suppose." "Ah, but that is not a measure at all," Poirot murmured. "Tell me, did Lord Cavendish have enemies?" "Edward?" "No. He could be short-tempered, but he was respected." Poirot's gaze softened. "You are a woman of intelligence, madam. You see much, you understand more. Tell me, who wished your husband ill?" Her hands twisted the corner of her handkerchief. "You think I know?" "I think you suspect." She hesitated, then said quietly, "He had business dealings with Lionel Drake, the art dealer. There were disagreements. Money, authenticity, I cannot say. And he had grown infatuated with that girl, Clara. It embarrassed us both." "Merci, madam." Poirot inclined his head. "You have been most frank." As she left, Hastings whispered, "You think she's hiding something?" Poirot's moustache twitched. "Every woman hides something, mon ami. The question is, whether it is guilt or merely pain." Clara Henshaw. The pianist entered next, young, nervous, eyes red from tears. Her fingers, long and delicate, fidgeted with the hem of her dress. Poirot gestured kindly toward a chair. "Mademoiselle," he said gently, "you are far from home, perhaps?" "Yes," she murmured. "From Sussex. Lady Cavendish invited me to perform." "You knew Lord Cavendish well?" She hesitated. "Not well. He was generous. He helped with my concert bookings." "Ah," said Poirot softly, "and in return?" Her eyes flashed. "You think I?" "Oh, no. He was kind to me, that's all." "Yet others might not have thought so," Poirot said. "The eyes of society, they are sharp, cruel, n'est-ce pas? Perhaps Lady Cavendish disapproved." She never said so." Clara's voice faltered. "But I could feel it. She watched me whenever I played." "Did Lord Cavendish promise you anything, mademoiselle? Money? Patronage?" Clara hesitated again. "He promised to sponsor my tour in the spring." "And did he change his mind?" "Yes. Last week. He said he had to make things right the first." I didn't understand what he meant. Poirot nodded thoughtfully. "And last night, before the lights went out, you spoke to him?" Her lips trembled. He came to the piano between dances. He said he wanted to talk later, alone. But he never came. Poirot regarded her gently. "You are frightened, mademoiselle." "Yes," she whispered. "Because someone here knows more than they're saying." Lionel Drake. Next came the art dealer, a well-fed man in an expensive waistcoat, smelling faintly of tobacco and pomade. He greeted Poirot with forced joviality. "Ghastly business, eh, Monsieur Poirot? Can't make sense of it. Poor devil, drop dead right there." Poirot smiled slightly. "Drop dead, you say? How convenient, monsieur. But tell me, you and Lord Cavendish, you were friends." "Business associates," Drake corrected. "He collected modern art. I supplied it. Yet there was tension between you." Drake's expression soured. "He accused me of selling a forgery." "Preposterous. My reputation is impeccable." "Indeed," Poirot said mildly. "And which painting was this?" "A landscape by Halloran, very rare. Cavendish bought it last year, then claimed it was false. Said he'd expose me. But we resolved it privately." Poirot's eyes sharpened. "Resolved? How?" Drake coughed. "He agreed not to pursue the matter further." "And you, monsieur, you agreed to what in return?" The man's collar reddened. "Nothing. Good heavens, I wouldn't harm him over a painting." Poirot nodded. "Art and murder both require imagination, do they not?" Drake glared but said nothing. "Reverend Miles." The Reverend entered last, thin, middle-aged, his collar slightly askew. He looked exhausted, as if he had aged years overnight. "Reverend," said Poirot kindly, "you were speaking with Lady Cavendish when the lights failed, I believe." "Yes. We were discussing the charity fund." "You were close to the Cavendishs." "Quite. I've known the family since my youth." Poirot folded his hands. "You manage their charitable accounts, do you not?" Miles shifted uncomfortably. "Yes. At least, I did. I keep the records for the memorial fund." And all was in order. A pause, too long. "Of course." Poirot leaned forward. "You hesitate. Why?" The Reverend wiped his brow. "It's nothing. Merely, Lord Cavendish discovered a shortfall in the fund. A miscalculation. He meant to address it publicly, but I begged him to wait. It would have ruined reputations. Mine among them." "Ah," murmured Poirot. "So he knew something, and now he is dead. That is unfortunate, is it not?" The Reverend's lips moved soundlessly. "You don't think I—" "I think nothing," said Poirot softly. "I observe. And I observe that guilt and grief sometimes wear the same face." When the interviews ended, the afternoon sun was already fading. Poirot sat alone for some time, fingertips pressed together, eyes half closed in thought. Hastings finally broke the silence. "Well, Poirot? What do you make of it all?" Poirot exhaled slowly. "Each tells the truth, mon ami, but not all the truth. Lady Cavendish fears disgrace, Mademoiselle Henshaw fears exposure, Mr. Drake fears ruin, the Reverend fears discovery. For souls, each entangled in the web, yet which one holds the thread that leads to death?" He rose, glancing toward the window where the rain had begun again, a soft, persistent tapping. "It is early still. But I tell you this, Hastings, before the sun sets again, there will be another attempt. When the guilty one kills once, it is rarely the end." Hastings paled. "Another murder?" Poirot adjusted his cuffs, his expression unreadable. "Perhaps. Or merely another lie. And in such a house as this, mon ami, sometimes they are the same thing. Chapter 4 of the Second Shock. By nightfall, the heavy clouds had gathered once more above Waverly House, pressing low against the chimneys. The rain had begun again, fine and steady, whispering against the windows like a secret that would not be silenced. Inside, the great house felt restless, its corridors too long, its silence too deep. Poirot sat in the library, alone but for the crackle of the fire. His small, neat form was motionless, save for the rhythmic motion of one polished shoe tapping lightly on the rug. On the table before him lay the cufflink, the red silk thread, and a half-written list of names. Each line contained a motive, a lie, or a contradiction. He stared at them as though arranging chess pieces. For suspects, he murmured softly, and one murderer. The pattern is still clouded, but soon, très bientôt, it will begin to clear. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. It was Captain Hastings, his face anxious. Poirot, you'd best come at once. There's trouble below stairs, in the cellar. Poirot rose at once, smoothing his jacket. Mon Dieu, trouble? But of course. When there is one death, there is often a second to conceal it. They descended the servants' staircase, lanterns throwing long shadows against the walls. The air grew colder, damp with the smell of earth and wine. Inspector Felton met them at the foot of the steps, grim-faced. In here, he said quietly, gesturing toward the open cellar door. Inside, beneath a single hanging bulb, lay the body of Mr. Travers, the butler. He was seated on the stone floor, his back against a cask, a revolver still clutched loosely in his hand. A folded note rested beside him. Felton read it aloud. I can no longer bear the guilt. Forgive me. T. Poirot stepped forward, eyes narrowing. He examined the hand, the weapon, the angle of the fall. Then he crouched low, tilting his head like a bird. Suicide, eh? Felton said. He must have done it from shame. Maybe he poisoned his master. The note says as much. Poirot's moustache twitched. Indeed, that would be convenient. A dead man cannot contradict the story. He pointed to the revolver. Observe, Inspector. The weapon is in his right hand, but the powder burns are faint, and the entry wound lies high and close to the temple. The angle is unnatural. And see, 2 glasses on the crate beside him. Why 2, if he drank alone? Felton frowned. You think someone staged it? I do not think, mon ami, said Poirot. I see. He lifted the note delicately between gloved fingers. Typed, not written. But the butler was a man of elegance, of habit. His handwriting, I saw it yesterday, small and fine. Why, then, this? Because it is false. He turned the paper toward the light. And there you see, Hastings? A faint indentation beneath the words. The page was pressed against another when it was struck. A copy of something else, perhaps. Hastings looked troubled. Good Lord, Poirot, so this isn't suicide at all. No, my friend, Poirot said quietly. It is murder number 2. The body was carried to the servants' hall. Poirot remained in the cellar, pacing slowly. The flickering light gleamed against the rows of bottles, catching labels and cobwebs. He touched one bottle absently, noting its layer of dust. Then something caught his eye, a faint smudge near the door, as though a hand had pressed against the wall. He bent closer. Red silk fibers clung to the stone. The same thread, he whispered. Always, the thread returns. Later that night, the household gathered once more in the drawing-room. The mood was heavy with fear. Lady Cavendish sat near the hearth, her eyes hollow. Clara Henshaw wept quietly beside her, comforted by Reverend Miles. The art dealer Lionel Drake stood apart, smoking nervously. Inspector Felton addressed them sharply. "I won't mince words. The butler, Mr. Travers, is dead, apparently by his own hand, though Monsieur Poirot believes otherwise. Until we determine the truth, you will all remain here. No one is to retire alone." "Two deaths in one house," Drake muttered. "This is becoming intolerable. You can't keep us prisoners." Felton glared. "I'll do what's necessary." Poirot, standing by the window, spoke softly. "Monsieur Drake, it is better to be a prisoner among the living than free among the guilty." Lady Cavendish rose suddenly, her composure cracking. "Do you mean one of us killed Travers as well? It's madness." "Madam," said Poirot gently, "what is madness but logic pushed too far? Someone here believes that by silencing others, they may silence truth." He walked toward the table, hands clasped behind his back. "Let us consider, who had cause to fear the butler? Mr. Travers knew much. He saw who entered the ballroom, who left it. He carried the champagne tray to Lord Cavendish himself. Donc, he was a witness, perhaps even an accomplice, unwillingly." The Reverend spoke hoarsely. "You think he was blackmailed?" "Perhaps," Poirot replied. "Or perhaps he knew something that threatened another. So they wrote him a confession, and then made him sign it with his life." A hush fell. Poirot's gaze drifted over each face in turn. Lady Cavendish, pale, her hands twisting her pearls. Clara, avoiding his eyes, guilt or terror flickering in her expression. Drake, sweating, his cigarette trembling slightly. The Reverend, lips moving in silent prayer. Poirot gave a small sigh. "The murderer is among you. Of that, I am sure. And already, he, or she, grows careless." He turned toward Felton. "Inspector, may I see the servant's logbook?" Felton nodded to an officer, who fetched it from the pantry. Poirot leafed through the pages quickly, scanning with remarkable precision. Then he stopped. "Ah," he said quietly, "we approach the truth. Look, the entry for last evening. Mr. Travers recorded the wine served at dinner. But note, here, the bottle number of the champagne taken to the ballroom is incomplete." He began to write C14, and then stopped. Something interrupted him. Felton frowned. "Meaning?" "Meaning, my friend," said Poirot, "that he was disturbed at the very moment he began to record it." "By whom?" "Perhaps by the murderer, wishing to ensure that no one knew which bottle held the poison." Clara shivered. "Then whoever tampered with the champagne must have done so before the gala began." "Precisely," said Poirot. "Which narrows our list indeed. For who among us had access to the cellar, to the wines, and to the trust of the butler? Someone of the house, or close to it." His eyes turned slowly toward Lady Cavendish. "Madam, may I ask, you dined with your husband before the guests arrived?" "Yes," she said faintly. "In the morning room." "And he drank then?" She hesitated. "A glass of brandy, perhaps." Poirot nodded. "And yet the poison was in the champagne. Curious, is it not, that he drank only one glass that evening, and that it killed him?" Her voice rose. "Are you accusing me?" Poirot's tone remained calm. "I accuse no one. I merely point out that opportunity dances always with proximity." Felton stepped forward. "That's enough for tonight. Everyone will remain under watch." As the guests dispersed under the constable's supervision, Poirot lingered by the fire, eyes on the dying embers. Hastings approached him quietly. "You really think Lady Cavendish did it?" Poirot shook his head. "Non, mon ami. If she is guilty, she is too composed. If she is innocent, she is too frightened. Either way, she knows more than she says. He looked up toward the grand staircase. And now, another thread has been woven into our tapestry, one that binds master, servant, and guest together. The picture is not yet clear, but the pattern, the pattern grows. He turned away from the fire, his voice barely above a whisper. Tonight, someone will make a mistake. And when they do, Hercule Poirot will be waiting. Chapter 5, Threads of Truth. The dawn broke slowly over Waverly House, a pale sun filtered through the misty gardens, casting long, trembling shadows across the wet lawns. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with unease. The previous night's horrors had left a lingering weight, every footstep, every creak of a floorboard seemed amplified. Hercule Poirot walked quietly down the corridor toward the grand drawing room, his small frame straight, his eyes glinting with purpose. Captain Hastings followed closely, notebook in hand, his expression tense. "Mon ami," Poirot murmured, "it is in the morning, you see, that the truth often awakens. Like the sun, it rises slowly, revealing shadows that were hidden in the darkness." Hastings shook his head. "I just hope it doesn't reveal any more bodies." Poirot gave a faint smile, almost imperceptible. "Ah, but sometimes the dead speak louder than the living." The red silk thread. In the drawing room, Poirot crouched beside the marble fireplace where the events of the previous night had unfolded. He carefully examined the banister once more. The red silk thread remained, a tiny, vivid reminder of movement, of contact, of hidden presence. "Observe, Hastings," Poirot said, holding it between thumb and forefinger. "This is no ordinary thread. Silk, fine and luxurious, likely from a gown of some expense. Only a few of the guests here would possess such a garment. And see, it was caught in the banister. The murderer brushed against it during the blackout. A slip of a hand, a moment too hurried." Hastings peered over his shoulder. "So, whoever it was, they left evidence without knowing it. Exactment. Clumsiness, perhaps. Or arrogance. One often forgets that even the most careful criminal may leave a single thread to betray them." Poirot wrapped the silk carefully in a handkerchief and placed it in his pocket. "We shall return to this thread later. But note, it is a beginning, not the end. The case of the missing cufflink." Poirot then turned his attention to the missing cufflink from Lord Cavendish's wrist. It had been discovered near the staircase, lone and gleaming, while its pair was nowhere to be found. "Curious," Poirot murmured, lifting it delicately. "Engraved with the initial E, from Edward, naturally. But the twin? Vanished. It may have been taken as a trophy, a warning, or perhaps to mislead. Whoever removed it had knowledge of the set and access to the victim." Hastings frowned. "Could it be a clue, then?" Mon ami. Every object tells a story. The cufflink is a statement, someone was careful, yet not careful enough. And that, Hastings, is what gives us hope. The piano and the hidden note." Poirot then turned his attention to Clara Henshaw. The young pianist had returned to her room after breakfast, practicing softly on the piano to calm her nerves. Poirot requested her presence. "Mademoiselle," he said quietly, "may I hear you play once more?" Clara hesitated, but then nodded. Her fingers glided over the keys, delicate and precise, producing a haunting melody that filled the drawing room. As she played, Poirot's eyes moved carefully over the sheet music. Suddenly, a folded note slipped from between the pages and fluttered to the floor. Poirot picked it up, smoothing it carefully. The paper was small, its ink faint. The message read, "You must remain silent, for both our sakes." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Ah, Hastings. Even music may conceal secrets." Note, Please, how the paper was concealed, pressed between notes, hidden, yet accessible to the keen observer. Someone sought to manipulate Mademoiselle Henshaw. Someone wished to frighten her into obedience. Clara looked pale, trembling. I don't know who sent it. I only found it when I played. Very well, Poirot said. And yet, mademoiselle, it is precisely this fear which illuminates the path. Fear is a compass to the guilty, n'est-ce pas? The portrait in the gallery. Later that morning, Poirot requested to examine the gallery, specifically the portrait of Lord Cavendish, painted only months earlier by a local artist. The painting hung above the sideboard, seemingly untouched. Yet Poirot's meticulous eye noticed a slight irregularity in the varnish. Notice, Hastings, Poirot said, brushing his gloved fingers near the edge, careful not to touch it. The artist's signature seems disturbed, slightly altered. It is as if the surface has been repainted. Beneath, something lies hidden. Hastings frowned. A secret painting. Perhaps a document, perhaps a note, perhaps a forged will. In this house, every wall may conceal both loyalty and betrayal. Let us see what is beneath. With Lady Cavendish's permission, Poirot carefully examined the painting from behind. Using a magnifying lens, he spotted faint lines, words obscured by varnish. Ah, he murmured, this is a secret worth more than gold. A forged document, hidden beneath the portrait. It names someone unexpected as heir. A motive, my friend. A motive. Patterns of behavior. As Poirot continued, he noted patterns, small, almost imperceptible behaviors among the household. Lady Cavendish touched her pearls constantly when nervous, and often avoided direct eye contact when speaking of her husband. Clara's hand shook not only from fear but from guilt, guilt over silence, over secrets kept. Lionel Drake moved too quickly to avoid discussion of the artwork and the will. Reverend Miles prayed excessively, muttering numbers and sums to himself when discussing the charitable funds. All of them conceal something, Poirot said softly to Hastings. And each act of concealment is a clue to the larger design. Hastings shook his head. It feels as though the house itself is conspiring against us. Poirot smiled faintly. Mais non, Hastings. The house is only witness. The criminal is among us, and the house will reveal them, if we watch carefully. The gathering of clues. By evening, Poirot had gathered several key pieces of evidence. The red silk thread caught on the banister, linking a guest's attire to the moment of murder. The missing cufflink, removed deliberately to mislead or signal. The hidden note in Clara's sheet music, suggesting manipulation and fear. The secret document under the portrait, providing motive for inheritance or exposure. He sat in the drawing room, small and deliberate in his movements, tapping his fingers together. Hastings, exhausted, sat nearby. Mon ami, Poirot said, we now possess a skeleton of the truth. But the flesh, the emotions, the reasons behind the crime, these are still veiled. Observe, Hastings, the murderer must reconcile opportunity, motive, and fear. And as night falls, so too does the tension. Lightning flashed outside the windows, briefly illuminating the garden. Poirot's eyes gleamed as he looked at the guests assembled for dinner. The threads are becoming strands, mon ami, he whispered. And soon, when they are woven together, the tapestry will reveal the murderer, and the reason why one man, and perhaps one more, lies dead in Waverly House. Chapter 6, A Portrait and a Secret. The evening at Waverly House was heavy with storm clouds once more. Rain pattered insistently against the tall windows, the wind moaning through the eaves. The house seemed alive with unease, its ancient timbers creaking as though whispering secrets long held. Inside, the drawing-room glowed warmly, but the guests moved with subdued caution, wary of the detective who watched them with small, piercing eyes. Hercule Poirot, seated in his accustomed chair near the fireplace, adjusted his cuffs and surveyed the room. Captain Hastings stood nearby, notebook in hand, silently observing Poirot's movements. "Mon ami," Poirot murmured, "tonight, we shall approach the very heart of the mystery. The house speaks in whispers, yes, but only to those who listen carefully. And I, Hastings, I hear every note." Hastings, rubbing his temples, muttered, "I just hope the next note doesn't involve another corpse." Poirot smiled faintly. Patience. The dead reveal far more than the living ever could, if one knows how to listen. The hidden document. Poirot rose and motioned for Hastings to follow him toward the gallery. The portrait of Lord Cavendish, the one he had examined previously, hung prominently above the sideboard. Poirot took a small magnifying lens and examined the edges carefully, then turned to Hastings. "Observe, Hastings. There is a document concealed behind this painting. Yesterday, we saw only the faintest traces. But now, look here, the varnish is thinner along the top corner. Someone wished to hide what lay behind." He carefully removed the painting from the wall, revealing a folded parchment, yellowed with age. Poirot's gloved hands handled it delicately. Hastings leaned closer. "Is it a will?" Poirot nodded. "OUI. But not as one would expect. Note, Hastings, the date, it is recent. And the signature. Faintly altered. Someone forged Lord Cavendish's hand." The parchment read as follows: Lord Cavendish had, according to the document, changed his will to leave the majority of his estate not to Lady Cavendish, but to Mademoiselle Clara Henshaw, with smaller sums to the charitable fund and negligible amounts to distant relatives. Hastings whistled. Good heavens! That would give someone a motive indeed, perhaps more than one. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Exactly, mon ami. And observe, who benefits if the document is destroyed, if the truth hidden? Who might act swiftly, cruelly, to ensure that the rightful heir is not revealed? He carefully rehung the painting and laid the document on a nearby table. We must consider opportunity and means as carefully as motive. Interrogating the guests again. Poirot called the key suspects to the drawing room, one by one, for careful observation. Each interview, though polite, was designed to elicit subtle cues, gestures, glances, silences. Lady Cavendish. Poirot began with Lady Cavendish. "Madam," he said gently, "you knew of this will." Her expression flickered. "No. I swear it. Edward, he never told me." "Why would he?" "Ah, but the will was recent. Perhaps it was meant as a surprise?" Poirot suggested. Her hands trembled as she folded them tightly in her lap. I might have guessed he favored Mademoiselle Henshaw, yes. But to change his will so drastically, I did not know." Poirot nodded. "And yet, madam, a woman's intuition is often a most delicate instrument. You sensed something amiss?" Lady Cavendish lowered her eyes. I suppose. But I never thought it could lead to this. Clara Henshaw." Next came Mademoiselle Clara Henshaw. Her hands were steady this time, but her eyes betrayed lingering fear. "Mademoiselle, you are named as the chief beneficiary in a certain document hidden here in the house," Poirot said softly. "Is this true?" "Yes," she admitted quietly. "Lord Cavendish wanted to ensure I could pursue my music without constraint. I never asked for it, he insisted." Poirot's gaze narrowed. "And last night, during the blackout, did anyone speak to you in secret?" Clara hesitated. I received a note. A warning. To remain silent." I saw it," Poirot murmured. "A note placed in your sheet music. Fear is a powerful motivator, n'est-ce pas? Clara nodded, her voice trembling. Yes. I was frightened, but I would never harm him. Lionel Drake. Poirot then turned to Lionel Drake, the art dealer. His face was tight, and he spoke quickly, as though eager to preempt suspicion. Monsieur Drake, you are aware of the value of hidden documents, are you not? Poirot asked. Drake hesitated. I suppose. And would you act to protect your reputation, monsieur, if you feared that your dealings might be revealed? Drake's face darkened. I have done nothing wrong. I would not kill a man over art. Poirot's small eyes glimmered. Yet, monsieur, consider, if a forged will were discovered in your possession, or used as a cover, could panic tempt even the most rational mind? Drake stiffened. You think I killed Cavendish? Preposterous. Poirot smiled faintly. I think nothing. I observe. Reverend Miles. Finally, Reverend Miles was questioned. Poirot's voice was gentle, but deliberate. You oversee the charitable fund, he began. And yet, last night, Lord Cavendish discovered a shortfall. Is that correct? Yes, Miles admitted. It was a clerical error. Nothing more. Ah, but the timing is remarkable. The night of a gala, the night of murder, a convenient moment for a secret to be lost, n'est-ce pas? The Reverend shifted uneasily. I would never harm him. Poirot inclined his head. I believe you, Reverend. But you fear exposure. Fear is often a compass, pointing not only to danger, but also to truth. Patterns and connections. As the night deepened, Poirot returned to his notes. He placed the red silk thread beside the cufflink, the note from Clara beside the hidden document. See, Hastings, he said, patterns emerge when one observes carefully. The thread indicates proximity, the cufflink indicates opportunity, the note indicates fear, and the will indicates motive. They converge. He paused, eyes closed in thought. And yet, the puzzle is not complete. There remains a final piece, mon ami. A misstep, a detail so slight, yet decisive. The murderer will reveal it, either through carelessness or arrogance. Hastings groaned. I wish they would make a mistake quickly, Poirot. I can barely sleep. Poirot smiled faintly, smoothing his moustache. Patience, Hastings. The crime speaks in whispers, yes, but the words are clear. Soon, all shall be revealed. And when it is, justice will be served with precision, as it must be. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the grand gallery. Poirot gazed at the portrait of Lord Cavendish. Beneath the surface, he could almost see the hidden truth. A tapestry of secrets, motives, and fears ready to be unraveled. Tonight, Hastings, Poirot whispered, we wait. And tomorrow, the truth shall step into the light, as inevitable as the dawn. Chapter 7, The Tangled Titans. The night had fallen thick and heavy over Waverly House, the wind rattling the tall windows as though the house itself were anxious. Inside, the drawing room was dimly lit, its tall curtains drawn against the storm. The tension among the guests had reached a quiet, simmering intensity. Everyone moved with care, their eyes darting nervously, whispering behind cupped hands. Hercule Poirot, small and composed as ever, sat near the fireplace, hands folded neatly. Captain Hastings lingered nearby, notebook in hand, uneasy under the weight of the house's quiet menace. Mon ami, Poirot murmured, do you feel it? The air is heavy not only with storm, but with lies. Every whisper, every glance, it carries a secret. And one of these secrets has already killed. Hastings shivered. I just hope the next one doesn't. Poirot adjusted his cuffs. Fear, my friend, is not only a danger to the timid, it is also a lantern to the clever observer. And I observe, I observe everything. A sudden discovery. Shortly after supper, the household was thrown into renewed alarm. Travers, the head housekeeper, rushed into the drawing-room, flustered. "Sir," he said, addressing Inspector Felton, "a message has arrived for Monsieur Poirot, slipped under the library door." No one saw the sender. Poirot rose carefully, smoothing his jacket. "Hastings, you will accompany me. This is a matter of importance." The note, simple in appearance, read, "The answers you seek lie where shadow meets candlelight. Come alone. A friend." Hastings raised his eyebrows. A threat? Or a trap? Poirot's eyes gleamed. Perhaps both. But a clever detective welcomes traps. They reveal intent, opportunity, and character. The library at midnight. The library was dim, lit only by a single candle on the desk. The shadows danced along the high shelves, creating a sense of movement where there was none. Poirot's eyes swept the room. "See, Hastings," he murmured, "here is a stage prepared for revelation. Watch carefully." He noticed immediately the faint mark of a footprint near the fireplace, delicate, perhaps a woman's slipper, slightly red along the edges. The print led toward the desk, where a small pile of papers lay. Among them, a sealed envelope bore the same crimson wax as the one that had arrived for him at the beginning of the investigation. Poirot lifted the envelope carefully and broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a threat, veiled in politeness. "Cease your investigations, Monsieur Poirot, or another shall fall. We know you observe." Hastings gulped. "Good heavens! They're daring us now." Poirot's expression was serene. "No, Hastings. They are foolish. Courage and fear are often intertwined. Observe, the letter is composed carefully, yet the envelope bears a faint smudge on the corner, red, as if touched by the same silk as before. The thread, Hastings, the thread returns." Hastings's eyes widened. "So it's the same person who left the thread during the blackout." "Exactment. And now we know, the perpetrator is bold, yet careless." Questioning again. The following morning, Poirot requested the presence of all key guests once more, intent on observing their behavior closely. Lady Cavendish. The widow entered, calm yet visibly shaken. Poirot noted the small twitch of her fingers as she clasped her handkerchief. "Madam," he said softly, "you have been in this house many years. Tell me, how well do you know the layout, the hidden passages, the servants' routines?" Lady Cavendish hesitated. "Well enough, but I have not needed to consider it before." Poirot nodded. "Ah, yet necessity breeds knowledge. One may move unseen if the need arises." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "Are you suggesting?" Poirot merely inclined his head. "I suggest only that observation is often more important than assumption." Clara Henshaw. Clara appeared next, hands folded neatly. Her eyes were cautious, yet Poirot noted her steady posture, a sign of controlled fear. "Mademoiselle," he said, "the note you received, was it signed?" She shook her head. "No, only a warning." And yet, Poirot observed, the handwriting, the phrasing, and the delivery all suggest familiarity with the house and its inhabitants. Someone intended you to know that they were close, but invisible. Clara's lips trembled. I never imagined that someone would do this." "Fear is a clever teacher, mademoiselle," said Poirot. "It teaches truth. And that is why I watch, quietly." Lionel Drake. The art dealer fidgeted nervously. Poirot's gaze was precise, resting on Drake's hands and posture. Monsieur Drake, Poirot said, last night, you claimed to have been in the gallery alone for some minutes. Is that correct? Yes, Drake stammered. I wanted to check a painting. Ah. And yet, the envelope slipped beneath the library door. Could you have delivered it, monsieur? Drake's eyes flickered. I don't know. Perhaps a servant did it. Poirot's small smile was courteous, yet firm. Perhaps. But note the pattern, Hastings. Each move, each action, each precaution, always near the candlelight, always where shadow might hide intent. Observe the boldness and yet the carelessness. Only one mind could navigate so. Reverend Miles. Finally, Reverend Miles entered, calm and composed, though Poirot noted a faint tremor of his hands. Reverend, Poirot said, your prayers, though sincere, are often accompanied by meticulous counting. Numbers calm you, do they not? The Reverend swallowed. They provide structure. And yet, structure is dangerous for the guilty. It imposes patterns that the observer may detect. The Reverend's eyes flickered to the floor. I do not understand. Perhaps, mon ami. But observation requires only patience, and the eye trained to see. And that, my friend, is what I possess. Subtle clues. By the afternoon, Poirot had noted the following. The red silk thread linked the person to the scene of Lord Cavendish's death. The footprint in the library suggested a female presence. The sealed envelope and the note in Clara's music pointed to deliberate threats meant to frighten the household. Lady Cavendish's knowledge of the house and her visible anxiety suggested opportunity. Clara's fear and the receipt of threatening notes suggested she was being manipulated, but not responsible for the murders herself. Drake's evasive answers, though obvious, revealed a man skilled in deception but limited in courage. Reverend Miles' nervous counting suggested he could be hiding something, but perhaps something minor, not fatal. Poirot paced the drawing room, small hands pressed together. The tapestry is almost complete, Hastings. Each thread, each pattern, each fear, they combine to show not merely a motive, but an intention. And the final act is approaching. Hastings looked worried. Do you really think the killer will strike again? Poirot's eyes gleamed. I do not think. I know. There is a recklessness in those who murder, a desire to see their work completed. And soon, mon ami, soon, they will make the mistake that allows the truth to shine. Lightning flashed across the drawing room, illuminating the portraits on the walls. Poirot's eyes rested on the portrait of Lord Cavendish. Beneath the veneer of paint and shadow, he could almost see the threads of truth. Woven tightly, waiting for the moment of revelation. The tangle tightens, he whispered, and soon, the final thread will be pulled. Chapter 8, The Unravelling. The storm outside Waverly House had finally relented, leaving the grounds wet and glimmering in a pale, hesitant morning light. Inside, the household was tense and uneasy. The events of the past week had left everyone anxious, their movements cautious, their eyes darting toward the smallest shadow. Hercule Poirot, small, neat, and immaculately composed, moved quietly through the drawing room, adjusting his cuffs. Captain Hastings followed, notebook in hand, his expression a mixture of anticipation and dread. Mon ami, Poirot said softly, today, we shall untangle the web. All threads converge, all lies dissolve, and the truth emerges, precise, delicate, and inescapable. Hastings nodded. I just hope the truth spares anyone else from harm. Poirot's small eyes gleamed. Fear is the language of the guilty, Hastings. And we are about to translate it. The gathering. Poirot requested that all the key guests assemble in the drawing room once more, Lady Cavendish, Clara Henshaw, Lionel Drake, and Reverend Miles. Inspector Felton and a small contingent of constables were present to maintain order, though it was clear Poirot intended this reveal to be his own doing. He began in his usual calm, precise manner. "Mesdames et messieurs, we have observed much in recent days. Motives, opportunities, and even mistakes have been laid bare. And now, the final picture may be seen, as clear as the morning sun." The guests exchanged wary glances. Even Lady Cavendish, usually composed, appeared tense. "Two deaths have occurred here, Lord Cavendish, and the unfortunate Mr. Travers, the butler. Both deaths are connected, and both are the result of a single individual's cunning and misjudgment." Revealing the threads. Poirot paused, surveying the room carefully. "Observe, first, the red silk thread discovered on the banister during the blackout. This thread belongs to a gown, fine silk, red, belonging only to Lady Cavendish. Its presence at the scene indicates opportunity, proximity, and intent. This is our first thread." Lady Cavendish's hands clutched her pearls tightly, but she said nothing. Poirot continued. "The second clue, the missing cuff-link of Lord Cavendish, found discarded near the staircase. One would only remove such an item deliberately, either to mislead investigators or as a mark of guilt. Its twin, missing, signals deliberate planning." Poirot lifted the red silk thread and the cuff-link, placing them side by side. Together, they suggest a hand familiar with the household, someone close to both the victim and the domestic sphere. Hastings muttered, "It seems clear enough so far, but which one of them?" Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Patience, Hastings. Observe the hidden will, found behind the portrait. This document names Mademoiselle Clara Henshaw as the principal beneficiary, much to the advantage of the murderer if it were destroyed. Motivation, therefore, is as plain as the nose on one's face, preserving inheritance, concealing betrayal." He stepped closer to Lady Cavendish. "And now, madam, the final and decisive clue, the footprint in the library, discovered last night. Delicate, feminine, slightly red-edged, matching the slippers you wear, madam. A careful observer cannot overlook such a detail." Lady Cavendish gasped. You cannot mean." Poirot raised a small hand. "Allow me, please. Observation is impartial. It does not accuse emotionally, it speaks quietly, rationally. And the pattern is complete. The motive." Poirot turned toward the gathered company. Lady Cavendish feared disgrace, yes, but more than that, she feared the loss of power and control within her household. Lord Cavendish's sudden favour toward Mademoiselle Henshaw threatened both her social position and her influence over the estate. Desperation, combined with opportunity, led her to act. Lady Cavendish's composure faltered. Her lips trembled. I only wanted to protect the family, the name." Poirot's expression was calm, almost gentle. "We all seek to protect what we hold dear. Yet when protection becomes murder, we enter a different realm." He gestured to the envelope slipped under the library door. The threats, the notes, the manipulations, all designed to frighten, to confuse, to prevent discovery. And yet, even the most cunning plans leave a trace. The silk thread, the footprint, the cuff link, and the sequence of actions, they reveal the truth. The final act. Poirot paused, eyes sweeping the room once more. "And Mr. Travers?" The butler, loyal to all but tempted by fear, discovered Lady Cavendish's plan. Threatened with exposure, he tried to intervene. She, in desperation, struck him down, staged a suicide, hoping to divert suspicion. Hastings, incredulous, whispered, "My word, all this time." Poirot nodded. "And yet, mon ami, the guilty cannot remain entirely clever." Lady Cavendish underestimated both fear and observation. The red silk thread, the carefully removed cuff link, the knowledge of the hidden will, all led me here. Lady Cavendish finally sank into a chair, her hands clasped in despair. Yes, she admitted softly. I meant only to frighten, to stop him from revealing the will, but it went too far. I never intended Travers to die. Poirot inclined his head. Intent and consequence are often separated by a single, fatal act. And thus, the tapestry of crime is woven. Resolution. Inspector Felton stepped forward, taking notes and ensuring the confession was recorded. The constables moved to secure Lady Cavendish discreetly, while Hastings looked on, stunned. Poirot, small and deliberate, turned to Hastings. Observe, mon ami. This case is not merely about murder. It is about fear, ambition, and human weakness. Each action, though deliberate, leaves an imprint. And that, Hastings, is the secret of detection. Hastings nodded, still pale. It's remarkable, Poirot. How you saw everything from such small details. Poirot's moustache twitched in a faint smile. Mon ami, the world is composed of little things, threads, footsteps, glances. The clever observer pieces them together. That is my method, and it is infallible when practiced with patience and care. Clara Henshaw, who had listened in silence, stepped forward. Thank you, Monsieur Poirot. I cannot believe I inherit Lord Cavendish's support, but I will honor it properly. Poirot inclined his head. You shall, mademoiselle. And let us hope that from tragedy, virtue may prosper. Justice has been served, not only in punishment, but in revelation. The truth has been made plain, and clarity, in the end, is the greatest reward. Epilogue. The storm subsided entirely, leaving Waverly House bathed in gentle sunlight. The garden glistened, wet and fragrant, as though the house itself breathed a sigh of relief. The household began to recover from the shock, slowly returning to routine, while Lady Cavendish was taken into custody. Poirot, small and precise, adjusted his jacket and straightened his posture as he prepared to depart. Hastings followed, still marveling at the detective's methodical brilliance. You were magnificent, Poirot, Hastings said. The way you saw everything, every thread, every clue, it's astonishing. Poirot smiled faintly, eyes reflecting calm satisfaction. Hastings, one must simply observe with patience, care, and understanding of the human heart. Crime is rarely chaos, it is a pattern. And when one has the eyes to see it, voila! The mystery resolves itself. As they stepped into the carriage, leaving Waverly House behind, Hastings glanced back at the stately home, now serene in the morning light. Do you think this house will ever forgive itself for the secrets it held? He asked quietly. Poirot's small eyes twinkled. Perhaps, Hastings. And perhaps, that is why mysteries exist, not only to reveal truth, but to remind us of the delicate threads that bind us all together. And with that, Waverly House faded into the distance, its shadows replaced by clarity, its silence a testament to the precision and brilliance of Hercule Poirot.